Rolling.
So, hello, my name is Julia Franco. I am 22 years of age. Um, just a little bit about myself. I am an MC. I go by the name of Jules, spelled Joules, which is actually a unit of energy, which I feel kind of pertains to me because I'm a very energetic person. And I've been writing and MCing since I was a freshman in high school, which would be about 7 years now. So I've been part of the hip hop community for most of my life. I remember listening to hip hop as young as like kindergarten. I was first exposed to gangster rap. At first I didn't even like it, and then it kind of grew on me. Pretty much I've always been around it to some extent. But specifically one event in my life that kind of contributed to the kind of MC that I am today would probably have to be just the influence that my oldest sister had on me as a young girl. My sister is 10 years older than me, and she was the first of my family. I come from a family of 9 siblings, so we're a very big Mexican family. Traditionally, the women in my family weren't allowed, well, not necessarily allowed, but they weren't expected to study or go anywhere to make a living for themselves and be self-sustaining. We were kind of expected to stay to our traditional gender roles of being like wives and tending to our future husbands or whatever, kind of like how my mom did. So my oldest sister, starting in high school, she was part of an org called Mecha, and it's been an organization that exists in high schools and in colleges from my knowledge that has helped specifically the Latino community, more specifically the Chicano community, to empower themselves, to politicize their existence, to kind of just understand their conditions and to better navigate spaces of education, and to just really work towards building a better community for everybody. And that was my first exposure to anything that had to do with feminism. And I remember being as young as like in the 3rd grade and my sister telling me stuff about feminism, and I didn't know what it meant, what it was, what it entailed. I think at most I kind of had a very vague understanding of it, kind of just from the stuff that I've heard in movies and stuff like that. But for the most part, I didn't have a positive perspective on feminism, and that makes sense because being that we live in a patriarchal society, the patriarchy is not going to paint a movement like feminism in the positive light. So my sister was the first person to expose me to feminism being something amazing for women everywhere, and not just women, but gender nonconforming folks as well as men, as a movement of liberation, to kind of dig deeper into yourself, to heal, to decolonize, all of that. And so I had a very basic understanding of it as a kid, but I remember I knew deep down inside that it was something good, that it was something right. I saw how passionate my sister was about it, But I was always really scared or ashamed to tell my friends, like, hey, I learned about this concept and I feel like I identify with it. Like, I wanted to call myself a feminist, but from the things that other people understood about it, me saying that out loud, people kind of had these preconceived notions about it and kind of looked down upon me, or kind of just made me seem like I was just one of those angry girls that hated men, That's what a lot of people thought it was, So for a very long time, I was scared of like who I really was, I was scared to tell people that I didn't really feel free as a mujer, and I also saw that in my family, that I didn't see my mom was free. I didn't see that my hermanas were free enough to be who they are, And that's when I knew that feminism was going to be a big part of my life forever. And I think at 15 years old, 14, I was a freshman in high school, I wrote my first rhyme, and for a very long time I didn't know any female MCs at all. I was just, I just knew of the biggest, classic names in hip-hop, and they were all men. So it's a very male-dominated culture for sure. So for a very long time, I was so fascinated by the way people MC'd, how, eloquent people could be with their words, how they could put style to it and express themselves. It was just a dope-ass platform to express yourself and to, you know, solidify your identity, say like, this is me, and this is, you know, the things that I'm saying matters, you know. I felt like that was super empowering, but because I never saw mujeres working in that space, I didn't think it was a space for me. So for a very long time, I remember always reciting, you know, raps by like Snoop Dogg, you know, just gin and juice. I remember memorizing that so young and like showing it to my friends, and they always thought like, oh, that's so cool, but never thought like, oh, how come you don't write your own? You know, I never thought of that. I never thought I was capable of it. And it had a lot to do with representation. I didn't see myself represented in the community, so I didn't think I was capable. So at 14, I kind of just thought like, yo, this shit's not that hard. Like, I was in the shower and I just like wrote like like 4 bars or something, and realized like it sounded pretty good, and I've heard things just like that, simple rhymes on like tracks that are well known, you know, in the hip hop community. So I realized that it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard, and it was something that I desired. I was very inclined to want to write. So I remember writing my first rhyme, and I literally locked myself in my room. I got my little notebook. It was the front cover was a cheetah print. You know, I was just a girl. I was a little girl, still trying to get to know myself and stuff, what I'm capable of and what I liked. So I wrote my first rhyme, and I didn't tell anybody for like probably 2 years. I didn't tell anybody. And my younger brother at the time was starting to produce, and now he's an amazing producer, but obviously, you know, I feel like we kind of took that journey together. He was really producing, kind of exposing himself, really putting his work out there, and he gave me courage. I think like him being younger than me and him making music and seeing that he was very capable, you know, that I felt very encouraged by it. So one day I decided to tell him like, hey, you know, I've actually been writing raps and I don't think they sound that bad. At that point, like I hadn't practiced them out loud. I had only read them in my head. I would say them to myself, so I didn't develop a voice. I didn't know how to deliver. So I remember the first time my brother got a little bit of equipment to record, and he's like, all right, well, spit the rhyme that you wrote. I was super shy. My voice was shaky. I was like, okay, and I felt really nervous and like scared that someone was going to say like, nah, you're a whack-ass MC, you know, just like give up. So, but I did it anyways, and I got it in the booth, and I spit my first rhyme, and I was just too shy that my voice was shaky and I didn't sound confident, so I sound whack. Like, I didn't sound good, and I knew that. And my brother told me, you know what, Julie, your content is good. What you say is dope, but you just need to be more confident in yourself. You need to practice it, get comfortable, develop your own voice and your own style. And so at first, you know, it was a little discouraging to hear like, oh, I'm not dope. But I mean, who is dope right off the back? You know, nobody is. So I took that as a lesson. I wrote more. I practiced it out loud until finally, like, I started developing my own sound. And then my brother was like, yo, like, you're an MC. Like, you're writing stuff. Like, you sound like yourself. You know, you're creating stuff it's uniquely you. And I remember already, I think probably by high school, like senior year, by that time I think I had a better understanding of social issues, the movements surrounding them, and I feel like generally I have always been like a reasonable human being, a compassionate human being, that I knew what was right from wrong. So I was personally really motivated also by my sister, who for years would teach me about social movements, the power of, you know, community, of solidarity, of coming together, you know, that we can make significant changes in our community. And so I feel like that I had a very big passion for that, and at the same time I was developing my art, and I felt the need to just merge them, you know, like I see that this was a platform, that there wasn't a lot of mujeres in the scene. Like, I have so much to say. I read books on, you know, on social justice issues, and these are things that are talked about normally, I feel, in pop culture, you know. So I feel like I felt like it was almost my job, or I had a responsibility to represent, you know. And not just I wanted to be there as like a female body in the space. Like, no, I wanted a much more physical presence, a much more verbal presence. I wanted my ideas to be there. Like, I wanted to represent, you know, justice, essentially. So for a while I struggled with kind of merging my art with my political views, because hip hop, although it did stem out of, you know, lack of representation, you know, the black community didn't feel represented in the places that they live, so hip hop was a venue for them to express themselves and have a voice. It was a social political movement to a certain extent, but obviously very ingrained with misogyny, with materialism, with a lot of things, you know. Obviously these people also talked from their experiences. For a very long time, it wasn't that they were glorifying violence, is that that was a part of their lives, you know. So I felt a lot of the times the themes in hip hop didn't really coincide with my experiences, my life, and kind of seeing how, although I would consider hip hop to be a culture and a space to liberate yourself, I think for a very long time I was lied to, you know. They painted it as liberation, but at the same time they constantly put down women in all their lyrics, you know, in almost every aspect. We're more of we're more of objects than we are as human beings with agency within the hip hop culture, especially in MCing. So I felt the responsibility, like I was saying earlier, to represent. So in college, I started gaining definitely a better understanding of feminism. I became a little bit more radical, more passionate, and more outspoken, and I realized that this is, if no one else is going to do it, then I have to do it. So I recently released an EP with my brothers, and one of the best things about working with my family is I have a different dynamic with them as a crew, as a hip-hop crew. Our relationships are based off love, you know. I've grown up with them, and just like I've seen them grow and they've seen me grow in so many ways, you know. And I feel like they really, of all the men in my life, they've been definitely the group of men who have really heard me out, who validated my experiences as a mujer, who said, you know what, it's true, you know, like mujeres aren't treated the way that they're supposed to be treated in this world. And that support meant everything to me, because there aren't a lot of men that, first of all, validate, you know, the experiences of women, but will listen to them and then also be willing to contribute to, you know, like the field and rap about these things. So we've made it a point between me and my brothers to make sure that the things that we talk about pertain to issues that we see in our own lives, in our family, that we talk about things that aren't reflected in pop culture, that aren't really talked about because it's important. But yeah, I just see the importance of being an individual at the same time being able to contribute to a larger space. I see the power of the individual, and more than anything, you know, I see the power of the mujer, that we have a lot of power. We just kind of have to, like stand up and, you know, say something about it. And so I've really taken a stand, and I've gotten really positive feedback from other mujeres who have approached me and told me, you know what, like, hey, I've been writing for years and I've never told anybody. And it's like, I was fucking there at one point, you know. And it's crazy to see how many people were in my position who didn't see themselves represented, so they didn't think that they could do it. So I've felt really empowered myself, but at the same time I'm empowering a lot of other people. And that's really contributed to my social activism. I think really also contributed to decolonizing the spaces that are meant for, you know, like the subjugated. You know, hip-hop is meant for us. It's for the poor. It's for the for those that aren't represented. So I feel like even within the spaces that claim to liberate us, need to still further be decolonized, that we need to transform them and continue to transform them. And so, yeah, that's been my journey as an academic and as an artist. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Julia.
Yeah.